Patricia's hand was already on the phone when the old man turned the page. What she didn't know about that worn book would change everything in the next 10 minutes. Respect isn't about appearance, it's about understanding. Watch what happens when a detective arrives at this library. Type honor if you believe grief deserves dignity. His name was Richard Owen, 63 years old. And every Tuesday morning at the Millbrook Public Library, he sat in the same corner chair by the window. Same faded jacket, same canvas bag, same stack of children's books that didn't match the weathered hands holding them. Most people walked past without looking twice. Patricia did look. She'd been library manager for 2 years, fresh from corporate training at the main branch, and she noticed everything. The worn boots, the jacket with its frayed collar and missing button. The way he'd been there since opening, 3 hours now, just reading. Not using the computers, not checking out books, just sitting, taking up space. "Excuse me, sir." Her voice cut through the quiet morning air. Professional, firm, practiced. Richard looked up slowly. His eyes were gray, tired, but steady. "Yes, ma'am? I'm going to have to ask you to move along. You've been here quite a while, and we have other patrons who need seating." The library was nearly empty. 4 other people scattered across 50 seats. An elderly woman at a computer, 2 college students studying, 1 teenager with headphones in. But Patricia had her rules. She'd seen this before at the downtown branch. Let one person camp out all day, and soon you'd have a problem. "I'm reading, ma'am." His voice was quiet, controlled, the kind of control that comes from practice. "Sir, this is a public library, not a shelter. If you're not checking out materials or using library services, I'll have to ask you to leave." She glanced at his bag, at the worn edges of his jacket, made her assumptions, made her decision. Richard's jaw tightened, just slightly. You might have missed it if you weren't watching closely. He looked down at the book in his hands. "Where the Wild Things Are." The cover was worn smooth from 1,000 readings. "I understand," he said. But he didn't move. Patricia felt her irritation rise. She'd dealt with difficult patrons before. They always had excuses. "Sir, I won't ask again. Please gather your things and exit the building." "I paid my taxes for 37 years, ma'am." His voice was still quiet, still controlled. "This library is as much mine as anyone's." "That's not how this works." Patricia pulled out her phone. "If you won't leave voluntarily, I'll have to call the police." The college student looked up. The elderly woman at the computer turned. Richard sat very still, his hand resting on the open page. A drawing of a boy sailing away to where the wild things lived. "Do what you need to do, ma'am." Patricia stepped away, phone to her ear. Her voice carried back, clipped and efficient. "Yes, I need an officer at Millbrook Public Library. We have someone refusing to leave the premises. Possible vagrant." "Yes, I'll wait." The teenager pulled off his headphones. Watching now. Everyone was watching. Richard turned another page. His fingers trembled slightly. Not from fear, from something else. Something deeper that lived in his chest and made breathing hard on Tuesday mornings. 10 minutes passed. Richard kept reading. Patricia kept watch from the front desk, her face set. She'd done the right thing. Rules existed for a reason. You couldn't have people treating the library like their personal living room. She'd seen what that led to, but the elderly woman at the computer was frowning. The college student whispered something to his friend. They'd been watching Richard too, watching how carefully he turned each page, how his lips moved slightly as he read, like he was speaking to someone, how he sat in that same spot every Tuesday at the same time. The door opened. Detective Mike Foster stepped inside, uniform pressed, radio on his hip. He'd been on patrol when the call came through. Routine, low priority. Probably nothing, but he'd check it out. Patricia pointed. There, the gentleman in the corner. He's been here for hours, refusing to leave when asked. Mike walked slowly across the library. Years on the force taught you to assess situations. The man looked rough. Worn jacket, weathered face, but something about the way he sat. Straight-backed, deliberate. And those books, children's books. Where the Wild Things Are, The Giving Tree, Love You Forever. Mike stopped 3 feet away, looked at the man's face, looked at the books, looked at the way the man's hand rested on the page, protective and gentle. "Sir, I'm Detective Foster. Library manager says you're refusing to leave." Richard looked up, met the detective's eyes. "I'm reading, Detective. I'll be done in an hour, like I am every Tuesday." Every Tuesday. Mike felt something click in his mind. He looked at the chair, at the window beside it, at the small bronze plaque mounted on the windowsill that he'd walked past 100 times but never really noticed. He stepped closer. "In memory of Corporal James Owen, USMC, 2003-2022. He loved books and dreamed of adventures." Mike's throat tightened. He looked back at Richard. Really looked. Saw the Marine Corps tattoo barely visible at the collar. Saw the way the man held himself despite everything. Saw the grief living in those gray eyes like a permanent resident. "Mr. Owen." "Yes, sir." Mike's voice dropped. Respectful, careful. "Your son?" Richard's hand trembled on the page. "My boy. Jamie. He sat right here every Saturday when he was little. This was his spot. These were his books." He touched the cover. "We'd read them together. He'd do the voices for the Wild Things, made me promise we'd keep reading them even when he got older." The library had gone completely silent. Patricia had moved closer, her irritation fading into something else. Confusion. The beginning of understanding. He deployed 6 months after his 19th birthday. Richard continued, his voice steady through force of will. "Helmand Province. I promised him I'd keep reading, every Tuesday, in his spot, our spot." He looked at Mike. "He never came home to read with me again." Mike had to swallow twice before he could speak. He'd been a cop for 15 years, thought he'd seen everything. But this was different. "Sir." He straightened to attention. "Thank you for your son's service, and yours. I can see you're doing something important here." Patricia's face had drained of color. I didn't know. I thought." You thought he was homeless." Richard's voice wasn't angry, just tired. "I know what I look like. Lost my job 2 years after Jamie died. Couldn't focus, couldn't care. Lost the house last year, but I never missed a Tuesday." He looked at her directly. "I have a storage unit with Jamie's things. I have a gym membership for showers. I have a part-time job at the hardware store. And I have this, every Tuesday. Reading to my boy." Mike turned to Patricia. His voice was professional, but there was steel underneath. "Ma'am, is there a problem with this patron using the library as intended?" "No." Patricia's voice cracked. "No, there's no problem. I'm so sorry." "Mr. Owen." Mike's voice softened. "With respect, sir, your son would be proud. This is one of the finest things I've seen. A father keeping a promise." He looked at Patricia. "And this man should never be questioned about his right to be here. Ever. Is that clear? Crystal clear?" Patricia couldn't look at Richard. Shame colored her cheeks. "Mr. Owen, I apologize. Sincerely, I should have asked. Should have known." Richard looked at her for a long moment. "You didn't know because you didn't ask. You saw what you expected to see." He closed the book gently. "Jamie used to tell me that everyone has a story, that you can't know someone's heart by looking at their shoes." He stood slowly. He was wise beyond his years, still teaching me lessons. "Please," Patricia said, "please stay. Finish your reading. I'm done for today." Richard picked up his bag. carefully placed where the wild things are, inside with the others. I'll be back next Tuesday, if that's still allowed. It's more than allowed, Mike said. In fact, I'd like to be here, if you don't mind. My daughter loves that book. Something shifted in Richard's face. Not quite a smile, but close. He'd like that. Jamie always said stories are better shared. Patricia watched them talk, watched other patrons approach, offering quiet apologies, asking about the memorial plaque they'd never noticed. The college student asked if he could sit with Richard next week and listen. The elderly woman mentioned her grandson was in the Navy. Mike walked Richard to the door. Sir, if you need anything, meals, referrals to services, anything, you call me. He handed Richard his card. I mean it. I'm managing, Detective. But thank you. Jamie taught me to accept help when it's offered. After Richard left, Mike turned to Patricia. That plaque. How long has it been there? 5 years, she whispered. I walked past it every day and never read it. Start reading, Mike said. People aren't problems to be managed. They're stories to be understood. The next Tuesday, Richard returned. Same chair, same window, same books. But this time, Patricia brought him coffee. On the house. She'd also printed a small sign for his reading corner. Reserved for Mr. Owen, Tuesday mornings. Mike kept his word. Brought his daughter. They sat quietly nearby while Richard read aloud, his voice carrying across the library. Other regulars began timing their visits for Tuesday mornings. Children's section volunteers started leaving new books in his spot. The library became what it was always meant to be, a place where stories lived, where grief could breathe, where a father's promise to his son mattered more than assumptions based on appearances. Patricia framed a photograph. Richard and Jamie, years ago, sitting in that same spot. Richard had brought it from storage. She hung it beside the memorial plaque, added her own inscription below. Some visitors come to borrow books. Some come to honor promises. All are welcome. Respect isn't given for what you carry in your wallet. It's earned by what you carry in your heart. Judge slowly. Ask questions. Everyone's fighting battles you can't see. If this story moved you, the next one's about a homeless veteran who stopped a robbery with 2 words. The suspect's reaction? It'll restore your faith in second chances. Subscribe to Honor Stories for more tales of hidden heroes who deserve recognition. Comment, promise. If you believe keeping your word matters, even when the world moves on. And hit that like button if you think a father's love is the strongest force on earth. Share this with someone who needs to remember that everyone deserves dignity. Everyone has a story. And sometimes the quietest people carry the heaviest burdens with the greatest grace.